The neighborhood barbecue had become an annual tradition. Every Labor Day weekend, our suburban Virginia street transformed into a celebration of grilling, gossip, and carefully maintained social hierarchies. Dad loved these events. Opportunities to showcase his successful career as a regional sales manager, his well-maintained lawn, his accomplished children. Well, most of his children. And this is my youngest, Alex, Dad said, introducing me to the Hendersons from 3 houses down. His tone carried that particular inflection I'd learned to recognize over the years. Pride mixed with mild embarrassment, like showing off a participation trophy. Works for the government. Clerical position but steady work. Good benefits. Mrs. Henderson smiled politely. How nice. Which agency? FBI, I said, taking a sip of iced tea. Oh, administrative work at the FBI. That must be interesting. Filing records management. Something like that, I replied, watching a group of kids chase each other across the Johnsons' yard. Dad clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that felt more dismissive than affectionate. Alex has always been good with phones and paperwork. Not everyone needs to be a superstar, right? Steady government work, pension, healthcare. Can't complain about that. I'd heard variations of this speech for the past 8 years. Ever since I'd graduated from Georgetown at 22 and taken what my family understood as an entry-level office job at the FBI headquarters in Washington. They knew I worked in government. They knew it involved the FBI. They'd simply filled in the blanks with assumptions that made sense to them, and I'd never bothered to correct those assumptions. My older sister Jennifer was the family success story. A cardiac surgeon at Johns Hopkins, married to another surgeon, living in a restored Victorian in Baltimore. She sent Christmas cards with photos of her 2 perfect children in front of their fireplace. She had accomplishments that made sense to people at neighborhood barbecues. My older brother Marcus ran his own accounting firm with 12 employees. He drove a Lexus and belonged to a country club. He could explain his career in one sentence that impressed Dad's friends. Then there was me, the mysterious youngest child who worked at an office doing government things that nobody quite understood. At family gatherings, conversations about my career lasted approximately 90 seconds before shifting to Jennifer's latest surgical breakthrough or Marcus's business expansion. I'd learned to be okay with this. More than okay, actually. The anonymity was useful. The lack of scrutiny was peaceful. Let them think I spent my days answering phones and filing paperwork. Let them imagine I worked in some fluorescent-lit office cube, processing forms and transferring calls. The truth was complicated enough without trying to explain it to people who'd already decided what my life looked like. Still living in that small apartment in Arlington? Mom asked later, refilling my glass of lemonade. Her voice carried that gentle concern that really meant disappointment. You know, with a government salary and your rent costs, you could probably qualify for a small condo. Build some equity. Marcus could help you look at properties if you want. My small apartment was a secure residence in a building that didn't appear on any public maps, with bulletproof windows and a security system that cost more than most people's cars. But I just nodded. Maybe. I'm comfortable where I am for now. You're 31, sweetie. At some point you need to think about building a real future. Moving up in your department. Maybe management. Do they have management positions in clerical work? There's definitely a hierarchy, I said, which was true. The organizational chart of the FBI had many, many levels. I just happened to be at the very top of it. Jennifer arrived fashionably late, her surgeon husband David in tow, their children immaculate in designer casual wear that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She found me by the dessert table helping myself to Mom's apple pie. Alex. How's the office job? Busy. How's the hospital? Exhausting but rewarding. We're pioneering a new valve replacement technique. I presented at a conference in Boston last month. She paused, her expression softening into something that resembled pity. You ever think about going back to school? Maybe get an advanced degree? Move beyond clerical work? You were always smart, you could do more. I'd completed my law degree at 24 while already working at the bureau. I had a master's in criminology and another in international security studies. I spoke 4 languages fluently and could get by in 3 more. Last month I'd briefed the National Security Council on counterterrorism strategy. Yesterday I'd authorized a multi-state operation that resulted in the arrest of 17 people involved in a human trafficking network. But to Jennifer, I was her younger sibling who'd somehow gotten stuck in an administrative position, and she felt obligated to periodically encourage me toward something better. "I'm good," I said. "But thanks for thinking of me." The afternoon wore on in predictable fashion. Dad's work friends asked polite questions about my office job, before moving on to more interesting topics. Marcus offered unsolicited advice about climbing the ladder in government work, suggesting I should be more aggressive about pursuing promotions. Mom's book club friends expressed sympathy that I was still single and stuck in that starter position. Nobody asked what I actually did at the FBI. Nobody inquired about my typical day or my responsibilities or whether I found the work fulfilling. They'd constructed a narrative that made sense to them. The youngest child who'd found modest, unremarkable work that paid the bills but would never impress anyone at cocktail parties. Around 5 o'clock, I felt the subtle vibration of my secure phone in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly, checking the encrypted message. Priority alert. Credible threat to critical infrastructure. National Security Council convening emergency session. POTUS requesting immediate briefing. Director's presence required. I read the message twice, processing the implications. This wasn't routine. The language choices, credible threat, immediate, POTUS requesting, indicated something significant was developing. Something that required decisions at the highest levels. I was formulating a response when my tactical earpiece, the one that looked like a regular hearing aid to casual observers, crackled to life with the voice of my deputy director. "Director, I apologize for the interruption. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. The President has been briefed and is requesting your presence for an emergency National Security Council meeting in 90 minutes. We're sending a helicopter to your location." I glanced around the barbecue. Dad was laughing with the neighbors. Mom was serving pie. Jennifer was showing photos of her children to a captive audience. Everyone was relaxed, enjoying the holiday weekend, completely unaware that their peaceful afternoon was about to be interrupted in the most dramatic way possible. "Understood," I said quietly into the earpiece. "Give me 2 minutes to extract myself, then you can proceed with pickup." "Copy that, Director. Helicopter ETA is 8 minutes. We've already coordinated with local air traffic control. Your security detail is en route." I pocketed my phone and walked toward my parents, trying to plan the smoothest exit strategy. But before I could reach them, Dad intercepted me with Tom Peterson, a recent addition to the neighborhood who owns some kind of consulting business. "Tom, this is my youngest, Alex. Works for the FBI, administrative stuff, but hey, government stability, right?" Tom shook my hand with the slightly condescending firmness of someone who'd decided within seconds that I was beneath his professional interest. "FBI, huh? What do you do specifically? Human resources? Accounting? I work in the headquarters building. Various responsibilities. General administration. That's nice. Steady work." His tone made it clear he considered this roughly equivalent to being a mailroom clerk. "I do private sector consulting, corporate security, executive protection, that kind of thing. Much more dynamic than government bureaucracy, but to each their own." "Security consulting must be interesting," I said neutrally. "Oh, it is. I've worked with Fortune 500 CEOs, handled threats, coordinated with law enforcement at the highest levels. Nothing against what you do, of course. Someone has to keep the filing cabinets organized, but there's really no comparison between private sector security work and administrative support." Dad nodded along enthusiastically, apparently taking no offense at Tom's casual dismissal of his son's career. "Alex has always been more of a behind-the-scenes person. Not everyone needs to be out front, right?" I was about to respond when I heard it, the distant thump of helicopter rotors, growing steadily louder. Within seconds, it went from background noise to unmistakable presence. Conversations around the barbecue paused as people looked up, shading their eyes against the late afternoon sun. The helicopter was black, unmarked except for a small American flag decal, coming in low and fast. It was a modified Sikorsky UH-60, the kind used for executive transport and tactical operations. As it approached, I could see the side door open and my security detail taking position. "What the hell?" Tom muttered, his consulting confidence evaporating. "Why is there a military helicopter in our neighborhood?" My earpiece crackled again. "Director, we have visual on your position. Landing in the Johnsons' front yard in 30 seconds. Your detail is ready for immediate extraction. The helicopter descended with precision, rotor wash sending napkins and paper plates flying across multiple backyards. The pilot set down perfectly on the Johnsons' expansive front lawn, and before the skids had fully settled, 3 members of my protective detail were out and moving toward me. The lead agent, Marcus Rodriguez, former Delta Force, now part of my personal security team, approached quickly but calmly, his hand near his concealed weapon as he scanned the crowd of shocked neighbors. "Director," he said, his voice carrying over the rotor noise, "we need to move. The president is waiting and the situation is developing rapidly." The entire barbecue had gone silent. 50 people stood frozen, holding plates and drinks, staring at the helicopter, at my security detail, at me. Dad's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been recognition. "Director? What's he talking about, Alex?" Tom Peterson had gone pale. "Director of what?" Rodriguez pulled out his FBI badge, not the standard field agent badge, but the distinctive one carried by the Bureau's executive leadership. "Sir, we need to brief you en route. The National Security Advisor is already in the Situation Room." Mom appeared at Dad's elbow, her face a mask of complete confusion. "Alex, what's happening? Why are these men calling you director?" I took a breath, years of explanation avoidance ending in this one bizarre moment. "Because that's my title. I'm the director of the FBI. Have been for the past 3 years." The silence somehow deepened. Jennifer dropped her dessert plate. Marcus the accountant made a choking sound. Tom Peterson looked like he might vomit. "The director," Dad said slowly as if testing the words. "You mean, the actual director? The person in charge of the whole FBI?" "Stat. The whole FBI. Approximately 35,000 employees. I report directly to the Attorney General and the President. I'm also on the National Security Council, which is currently waiting for me to join an emergency meeting at the White House." Rodriguez gestured toward the helicopter. "Director, with respect, we're burning time. The threat assessment is escalating, and POTUS wants your evaluation before making decisions." Jennifer found her voice high-pitched and strained. "You said you worked in administration. Filing papers. Answering phones." "No, you said that. I said I worked at FBI headquarters with various responsibilities. You all filled in the blanks based on what you wanted to believe." Another security agent approached, carrying my go bag, the always-packed emergency kit containing secure communication equipment, classified briefing materials, change of clothes, and everything else I might need for a sudden crisis deployment. He also held out my FBI director's badge and my service weapon. I clipped the badge to my belt and checked the weapon with practiced efficiency before holstering it. The simple, automatic nature of these movements seemed to hit my family harder than anything else. The casual competence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "How long?" Mom asked weakly. "How long have you been?" I was appointed deputy director at 27, which you all assumed was a promotion to senior administrative assistant. I became acting director at 28 when my predecessor resigned. Confirmed as director at 29. So, about 3 years in the top position, but I've been in executive leadership for 5 years total. Tom Peterson, the private security consultant who'd condescended to me about working with law enforcement at the highest levels, looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. You're Alexandra Reeves. The Alexandra Reeves. You testified before Congress last year about the domestic terrorism threat assessment. You were in the news when you restructured the counterintelligence division. And when I expanded the cyber crimes unit, reorganized our field office structure, and implemented new protocols for coordination with international intelligence services, I added. It's been a busy few years. Rodriguez touched my elbow gently. Director, the National Security Advisor is getting anxious. We really need to move. Dad grabbed my arm before I could turn. Why didn't you tell us? All these years, all these family gatherings, you let us think you were nobody. I never said I was nobody. You decided I was nobody and correcting you became exhausting. Every time I tried to explain my actual work, you changed the subject or offered advice about pursuing real advancement. Eventually I stopped trying. Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed. All those times I gave you career advice. All those suggestions about being more ambitious, more aggressive. You were giving the director of the FBI career advice about climbing the ladder, I confirmed. It was educational. Showed me exactly how much you all actually listened when I talked about my life. Jennifer's husband David, who'd been quiet until now, cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I'm a cardiac surgeon and I'm moderately terrified of you right now. The director of the FBI is arguably one of the most powerful positions in the country. Top 15 according to most assessments, I said. Though the rankings fluctuate depending on current events and which think tank is doing the measuring. My phone buzzed with another message. I glanced at the screen. President asking for ET. NSC is assembled. Situation deteriorating. I have to go, I said, pulling my arm free from Dad's grip. There's a genuine national security situation developing, and the president needs my assessment before making decisions that could affect millions of people. We'll talk later, but right now this isn't about family dynamics. This is about my actual job. What kind of situation? Mom asked, her voice small. The classified kind. The kind that requires the director of the FBI to interrupt a holiday weekend and deploy via emergency helicopter. Beyond that I can't say, and honestly, you wouldn't have clearance to know if I could say. Rodriguez and my security detail formed up around me, creating a protective cordon as we moved toward the helicopter. The rotor wash intensified as we approached, and I could hear the pilot increasing power in preparation for immediate takeoff. Just before climbing aboard, I turned back to look at my family one last time. They stood in a cluster. Dad, Mom, Jennifer, Marcus, all their carefully constructed narratives about my life collapsing in real time. The neighbors surrounded them, equally stunned, their suburban holiday transformed into something surreal. Tom Peterson caught my eye and I couldn't resist. That private sector security consulting you mentioned? If you're interested in doing it properly, the FBI has contracts with several firms for specialized services. My office handles the vetting process. Feel free to apply, though I should warn you our standards are quite rigorous. His face went from pale to crimson. I climbed into the helicopter and Rodriguez slammed the door shut behind me. The pilot didn't waste time. We were airborne within seconds, banking sharply toward Washington as the barbecue shrank to a collection of tiny figures staring up at us. My deputy director, Catherine Morrison, was already on the secure video link, her face filling one of the helicopter's internal screens. Director, bringing you up to speed. At 1,647 hours, NSA intercepted communications indicating a coordinated cyber attack targeting power grid infrastructure in 6 major metropolitan areas. FBI Cyber Division has confirmed the threat is credible. DHS is coordinating with local utilities, but we need federal guidance on response protocols. I pulled up the briefing materials on the secure tablet, scanning through technical details and threat assessments while Catherine continued her summary. This was my actual life. Not neighborhood barbecues and condescending consultants, but national security crises and presidential briefings. Not filing papers and answering phones, but directing 35,000 agents and analysts in protecting the country from threats most people would never hear about. What's our attribution confidence? I asked, studying the intelligence summaries. 78% confidence it's the same actors from the Port Authority breach last year. Cyber Division is running confirmation protocols now. Have we briefed infrastructure targets? In progress. Field offices are coordinating with local law enforcement. CISA is handling technical mitigation. The helicopter cut across the Virginia suburbs, heading for the White House. Through the window, I could see the Potomac River gleaming in the late afternoon sun, the monuments of Washington rising in the distance. Somewhere down there, my family was probably still standing in stunned silence, trying to reconcile the office assistant they'd patronized for years with the person who'd just been extracted via helicopter for a presidential briefing. Rodriguez handed me a change of clothes, proper attire for a White House meeting. I quickly swapped my barbecue casual for business professional, maintaining my balance in the moving helicopter through practice and muscle memory. Your speech is in the secure pocket, Rodriguez said, referring to my prepared remarks if the president decided to make a public statement. Legal reviewed it. Press office approved it. It's ready if needed. Let's hope it's not needed. Public statements about infrastructure vulnerabilities tend to create more panic than they prevent. Catherine's face reappeared on the screen. Director, you should know, this is already leaking. We're seeing chatter on secured networks. If we don't move quickly, civilian outlets will start reporting, and then we'll have a different kind of crisis. Understood. Tell Cyber Division I want attribution locked down before we brief POTUS. I'm not recommending response options without solid intelligence. They're working it. Estimate 20 minutes to confirmation. The White House came into view, its familiar outline sharp against the evening sky. The helicopter descended toward the south lawn, where Marine One usually landed but which had been cleared for our arrival. I could see Secret Service agents positioned around the landing zone, the presidential security apparatus in full coordination mode. We touched down smoothly. The moment the skids hit grass, Rodriguez had the door open and my detail was moving. We crossed the lawn quickly, passing through multiple security checkpoints, each one recognizing me immediately, waving us through without the usual credential checks because my face was literally in their briefing books as someone to expedite. Inside the West Wing, the atmosphere was controlled chaos. Senior staff moved with purposeful urgency, their expressions tense but professional. An aide I recognized from previous meetings intercepted us in the hallway. Director Reeves, the president is in the Situation Room. NSC is assembled. They're waiting for you. We descended into the secure basement levels, past additional security checkpoints and blast doors, into the complex of rooms where the nation's most sensitive decisions get made. The Situation Room was full. The Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor, the Director of National Intelligence, the Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of Homeland Security. All of them turned as I entered. The president rose from his seat at the head of the table. Alex, thanks for getting here so quickly. I know you were off today. Hope we didn't interrupt anything important. Just a neighborhood barbecue, Mr. President. Nothing that can't wait. He smiled briefly, then his expression turned serious. Walk me through what we know. The reports I'm getting are concerning, but I need your assessment before we make any moves. I moved to the head of the table, pulling up the intelligence summary on the main display screen. This was what my family couldn't understand. This weight of responsibility, these decisions that rippled out in ways that affected millions of lives. Not filing papers. Not answering phones. But standing in a room with the most powerful people in the government, providing the analysis that would shape their response to a genuine threat. Mr. President, members of the Council, I began falling into the briefing mode I'd refined through hundreds of similar sessions. At approximately 1,645 hours today, the FBI Cyber Division, in coordination with NSA, identified credible threat indicators suggesting a coordinated attack on critical infrastructure. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket. Probably my family, probably demanding explanations, probably still reeling from the revelation. But that would have to wait. Right now I had a job to do. The job I'd been doing for years while they all assumed I was filing papers in some anonymous cubicle. The briefing continued for 90 minutes. We analyzed threat vectors, discussed response options, coordinated with military and intelligence partners. The president asked sharp questions. The defense secretary raised tactical concerns. The national security advisor wanted timelines. And I provided answers, drawing on years of experience and the expertise of the thousands of people under my command. Eventually, the president made his decision. A measured response that balanced security needs with civil liberties concerns, exactly the kind of nuanced choice that never made dramatic headlines but that kept the country functioning. As the meeting broke up, the national security advisor caught my arm. Good briefing, Alex. The president trusts your judgment on these matters. That's not something he gives easily. I appreciate that, sir. You headed back to your family gathering? I checked my watch. Nearly 8 p.m. The barbecue would be long over by now, replaced by frantic family group chats and probably a series of increasingly panicked messages wondering where I'd gone and whether the person who'd been extracted by helicopter was really their daughter and sister. Eventually, I said, first I need to check in with my team, make sure the field offices have what they need for follow-up. He nodded. The job doesn't stop just because you briefed the president. No, sir, it doesn't. I made my way back to the helicopter. A different one this time, my regular transport rather than the emergency extraction bird. The flight back to FBI headquarters took 20 minutes, cutting across the district as night fell over the capital. Below, the city glowed with lights, millions of people going about their evening routines, completely unaware that their power grid had just been protected by decisions made in a basement room by people whose names most of them would never know. At headquarters, my senior staff was waiting with updates. The Cyber Division had confirmed attribution. Field offices had made contact with all critical infrastructure targets. DHS had implemented enhanced monitoring protocols. The threat was being contained quietly and efficiently, in exactly the way these things should be handled. It was nearly 11 p.m. when I finally checked my personal phone. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. Multiple voicemails. All from family. Dad, we need to talk. Please call me. Mom, Alex, honey, I don't understand what happened. Please come home. Jennifer, I'm so sorry. We should have listened. We should have asked. Marcus, I feel like an idiot. All those times I gave you advice. And several from Mom's book club friends, Dad's neighbors, even Tom Peterson. All asking variations of the same questions, all wanting explanations for the cognitive dissonance of discovering that the office assistant they'd patronized was actually one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the country. I drafted a single group message. I'm fine. The situation is handled. We'll talk tomorrow. Yes, I'm really the FBI director. Yes, I've been the FBI director for 3 years. No, I'm not mad. I'm just busy. Talk tomorrow. Rodriguez appeared in my office doorway. Director, your car is ready whenever you want to head home. Unless you're planning to work through the night. Not tonight. I think I've had enough excitement for one day. The drive back to Arlington was quiet. My actual apartment, not the small unit my family imagined, but a secure residence with enough space for a home office, a small gym and accommodations for my security detail, felt peaceful after the chaos of the day. I poured a glass of wine and stood at the window, looking out at the lights of Washington across the river. Tomorrow I'd deal with my family, have the conversations that were now unavoidable, try to bridge the gap between who they thought I was and who I actually am. But tonight I was just tired. Tired from the crisis management, tired from the revelation, tired from years of being underestimated by people who should have known better. My secure phone buzzed with a final message from Catherine. Threat contained. All systems secure. Nice work, Director. I smiled. Nice work indeed. The country was safe, the crisis was managed, and maybe, just maybe, my family would finally stop offering me career advice about climbing the government ladder. Though knowing them, they'd probably just start offering different advice. How to handle the pressure of executive leadership. Whether I should write a book. If I'd considered running for political office. Some things I suspected would never change. But at least now they knew I didn't answer phones for a living.